What is up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the F4U-1D Corsair from Tamiya with the Moto Tug. Now, in my previous video, I actually built the Moto Tug, so go ahead and check that video out. But for this video, I'm just going to be building the interior of the Corsair. I like to do these in-depth videos because I feel like I do a lot of filming and then a lot of editing, and you miss a lot of steps and tricks I use to actually accomplish the interior of a really nice build. And I think it's my favorite part is the interior of the aircraft. I like weathering it and painting all the bits and bobs and stuff, so I just wanted to highlight the stuff that I do and segment it out into shorter videos for you guys so it's easier to understand and you're not missing a whole bunch of content. So here, getting into the boxing, everything is sealed up perfectly and all the parts are on the sprues, unlike the Rebel kit, which literally half the parts were off the sprue. I was expecting to be the less parts in the box. I had no idea this had so many parts, but that's all the more and better. Like, that's totally fine with me because it's Tamiya, so everything's gonna fit together perfectly. Up and squish it in. Assembling parts, I just used Tamiya cement and some stable hands. What I did with this build was actually separate it into a couple different segments so it was easier for me to paint. So this is one segment here, and the seat and the back plate was another segment, as well as the armchair. So, well, that's what I'm calling it anyways, but these are like, I don't know. I don't even know what to call them. But anyways, I segmented them out into 3 parts and then primed them with some Vallejo green. This is my go-to primer for all my interiors, as sometimes it leaves a nice little texture on there for you. Yeah, sometimes it just splatters everywhere, and it's primer, so who cares? But anyways, it does leave a little bit of a texture, which I don't mind on the interior, as it's going to highlight those areas when I do some texturing and silvering and stuff. So, and also when I put on a wash. So I really don't mind the texture on the interior. Next, I paint the whole interior with this interior green. I believe it's chromate green, but it's not too yellow, which is nice, because some chromate greens are really, really yellow, which are great for P-47s, but for the Corsair, I'm just wanted a lighter green. Now, I just have a drop of black on my paint splotch and a drop of water, and I just use my brush to slowly dip it into black and the water, just to make a nice mixture so that the paint lays nice and evenly around these black spots. If I get a little bit on the outside, I use a toothpick that I sucked on for a little bit, and I just rub that area off, and it usually takes the paint right off. Then I use some hyperspeed to let you know that I'm not superhuman. I have all of this jacked up into really short segments of multiplied speeds. So I think the slowest speed that I have on here is actually 0.2, so it takes me a while to do this. Now, to do this headrest, I actually used some Mr. Surfacer 500, and I just wanted to add a little bit of texture so it made it look like an actually used seat cushion. Next, I paint some buttons and dials with some white, and I just use a nice brush to do that with. Now, I can apply some decal solution for the instrument panel decal. As you can see, the instrument panel isn't Quintus Studios quality. I actually have the Quintus Studios whole set for the interior of this thing, but I opted not to use it as the interior was really, really good. So I just made what I had work. Now I spend about an hour doing some silvering techniques on the interior, and this really, really makes your model look like somebody lived in it through the war. This is probably my favorite process and my favorite process to film, as I do think it's the most satisfying, and it's also really fun to see how much this changes the effect of the aircraft. And the same goes for weathering, but for me, I just really like the stippling effect. I use a little sponge to do that. Next, I'm using some dark brown from AK, and this is a wash that I usually use for interiors on greens, as it's not too harsh, but it's subtle enough where I don't even have to wash it after I'm done. Now, heading back to the seat cushion after the Surfacer 500 dries, I then apply some dark paints and lighter browns, and then darker browns, and then lighter browns to just add more texture and more flavor to the seat cushion itself. Once all the colors were applied, I then washed it with a dark brown wash. Then I dry brushed it with a very light tan mixed with white. Now, to actually use the sponge, I do dip it into paint and then I dab it onto a dry piece of paper towel several times so that barely anything is coming off of it. But in some instances, I don't do that so that I do have a nice stipple texture from the sponge. So in some cases, I do dip it. In some cases, I don't dip it as much, and then I dab it off onto a paper towel so it dries it off. Now, while doing the sponge technique, make sure to take the sponge off and twist it around so that you get a different texture, and rip it in places, and just do some different things with your sponge so that it doesn't look so monotonous when you go and do your actual build. Because I don't know how many times I've done it where I've used the same part of the sponge a million times and it looks like I used the same part of the sponge a million times in the same area. So just make sure you flip it around and twist it up and tear it up in different places, and that will help your texture be more random. Next, I can assemble the rest of the interior and pop it all together, and then show you guys the final pictures of the actual interior of this awesome airplane. Stay tuned for the next video. I'm going to be going through the whole build process for the Caorsiar itself. I'm going to fold these wings up and it's going to look sweet. So thank you guys again for watching. Stay tuned for the next photos in the next video. Let's get back to building.